Welcome to the Connected Mom podcast, where we love to have real conversations that hopefully help you to connect more deeply with God, more empathetically with your fellow moms, and more intentionally with your child. I am Becky Harling, your host, and today we are going to just have an amazing conversation because I remember when my husband Steve and I were raising 4 kids, and there were seasons where the house was clean, but there were also seasons where, the house was a wreck and I felt guilty and I wondered, can I ever get a grip on my house again? And we're going to be talking about that today with best-selling author Dana K. White, who really is an expert on decluttering. However, today's book is Jesus doesn't care about your messy house. He cares about your heart. And I don't know about you, but I find that wildly refreshing. So Dana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, so I remember a season, I'll start with this story, Dana, and then we're going to get into your book. I remember a season when Steve and I were raising our kids and we were getting ready to sell our house. And we had left house. Both of us were working at a church. He was the lead pastor and I was director of women's ministries and small group and such. Anyway, we got a call from the realtor that he was going to show our house in 45 minutes. And we knew we had not left it well kept. So I looked at my schedule. I had meetings. Steve didn't. I said, run home, grab everything, throw it in a laundry basket, and then put it in your car. And he said, okay, I can do this. He ran home. He threw everything in a laundry basket. The only problem was he left the laundry basket with all the clutter on the front porch. So that's what greeted the realtor. So I kind of love this book that you came out with. So tell us a little bit about the backstory.
So my story is that I was born messy. I was always messy. I had a messy room. I had the locker in high school that I would open up and everything would fall out. I was just always messy. But I assumed that once it mattered to me, once I was a wife and a mom, that I wouldn't be messy anymore, because I just always thought, okay, it's because I'm busy. I have other focus, whatever. And then I became a wife and a mom, and especially as a mom realized, oh, it's even harder now. I had thought for some reason, if I'm going to stay home, what else do I have to do but clean, right? But it's even people who've been, neat and tidy their whole life tend to struggle once you have kids, right? So I came to a point where I just felt so completely defeated on this, and it was keeping me from writing. I wanted to write. I felt like God was calling me to write, and I was like, I've got to get my house under control first, even though I tried my whole life, right? And so I started a blog called A Slob Comes Clean back in 2009.
I love that title. What a great blog title.
Well, it was God's idea, not mine. Okay. I very much did not want to call myself a slob, right? But that was the title, which it is catchy, that God just gave me. And I was like, really? But also, just to be clear, it was anonymous in the beginning. I made up a fake name. I set up a new email address. I didn't want anyone to know this was me because I thought it was going to be a practice blog. I just wanted to write, and I thought, okay, maybe I could use this as a way to learn and practice, get my house under control, so then I can actually write about things that God would want me to write about, because this is just the struggle that I have, right? This is my biggest weakness. And so, turns out that I'm still writing about this 15 years later. Yeah, right. I never thought this would be the thing because, like I said, in the beginning, it was anonymous. It was just me focusing. But what I learned was there are so many women who struggle the way that I did. But like me, they think they're the only ones, right? I did not know that anyone else felt like this stuff was as hard as I thought it was, right? Because you look at other people and you think, how do they do this? How do they keep things under control? How is it that I can, need to come over and get something from them and they just let me in and their kitchen's perfect and all? And I was like, I don't know how they do this. So I figured out how to do that, having no intention of teaching anyone anything. And then after several years of really getting my house under control and people starting to read the blog, they were like, you need to teach us how to do this. And so that was a huge shift for me into, really, God, like, this is the thing that you wanted me to write about all along. Like, that was shocking to me. Like, I had no idea that this was what he had designed. This is the reason he placed the desire to write in my heart, was for this. And I feel like this book is the culmination of that, right? Because Jesus is the only thing that matters. But if we're struggling so hard with something, it can feel so all-consuming that it's hard to see Jesus, right? Because we're so focused on why is this struggle just so all-consuming?
Well, and there's so much I love about what you just said. I have a million questions going through my mind because I think, for starters, the shame piece, right? So moms especially look at other moms' houses and are like, how does she do that? You know, I also think, tell me what your thoughts are on this. I think those who are really creative sometimes have a really harder time being crazily organized, right? I mean, I had a son who was wildly creative and I could never get him to clean his.
That is it. I mean, like, that is it. So when I started, like I said, I didn't want to call myself a slob, right? But because I had, and because it was anonymous, I was completely honest in a way that I had never been before, because nobody was reading it in the beginning, you know, and so I just felt like I'm just like, you know, and part of it was that I'd already called myself a slob, so there's nothing worse to say, and so I might as well be completely honest, right? And as I
love that honesty. Right? Go ahead.
It was not fun. It's still not fun to tell people what I do for a living, but what happened was that as people started reading it, because I did want people to read it, just nobody I knew, right? As people started reading it, I thought they were going to say, oh my word, you're a horrible mother. Get off the internet. I can't believe you're saying these things. And instead, people said, oh my goodness, me too. I think that way. I struggle this way. What you're saying is exactly the things that go through my mind, but I don't even know how to put it in words, you know? And in the beginning, back in 2009, when somebody left a comment on your blog, you clicked on their name and they had like a Google profile and you'd be like, who is this person? Because you're so excited somebody was reading, right? And what I saw is that the people who were saying, my brain works the way your brain works, were highly creative. I was a theater arts teacher, turned stay-at-home. So I had turned stay-at-home mom, and I was wanting to write as a creative outlet and a way, something I could do while I had kids. And I just saw the connection between creativity, the part of me that I am so thankful for how God made me, right? Like, I'm like, thank you, God, for making me creative. This is what makes me tick. It's what I love. But I saw that it was directly related to my struggles in my home. And when I saw that those two things were both how God created me, that freed me from that shame, right? Like, because the shame was holding me back because I kept trying to do what people said was supposed to work, but God made them differently.
Yes, he did. I mean, I remember being a young mom, and okay, I used to get so intimidated by quote unquote personal organizers. And I remember having one in my home who I thought was just going to be my friend. And instead, she gave me advice on how to clean my stairs. And I was like, okay, this friendship is going to work for me. Because I felt so intimidated, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And God created their brains to work differently. And it was not a mistake. He did not make a mistake when he made me to operate the way that I do. And when I took that shame away of like, why doesn't this work for me? And I said, okay, if God made me this way on purpose, there's a way. I just have to figure out the way that works for my brain and the way that I'm created. That, taking that shame away, is the thing that freed me to move forward. And I hear it from people all the time. They say the biggest factor in finally being able to change their home was realizing they're not alone. And realizing that they're not broken. And just that freedom to move forward in what does work is really powerful.
Yeah. And so, the title of your book is Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy Home. And I love that title so much because a lot of us grew up hearing, well, cleanliness is next to godliness. But you and I both know that's not in the Bible.
It's not in the Bible, and it's actually very dangerous because it's very easy to say, right? Like, and I get it. I don't blame anybody for saying that. I don't even blame John Wesley, who was the first one to say it, which I was so hoping it was Shakespeare. Like, I really was like, let it be Shakespeare that said this so that no. Of course, it's this famous theologian, right? And I know there was context there and everything. So I'm not making any kind of like major statement about that. I'm just saying it's one of those things that when you're a parent trying to get your kid to clean, it can just come out of your mouth, right? But it's a dangerous statement because cleanliness is not next to godliness. There is nothing we can do to bring us to God. It is what he has done to bring us to him, right? And so that realization is powerful. But, for the person who has felt legitimately closer to God by maintaining their home and keeping their home, that can be dangerous there too, right? Because your focus is not on the right thing. But then I'm coming at it from the angle of there are those of us who can't do it. And this is what I used to feel like. I have figured it out. But as I figured it out, I also figured out how much God doesn't care about it. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, you know what? I only wanted your heart. I wanted your heart. But for those who feel inept in this area, it's like, okay, well, if cleanliness is next to godliness, then I have no hope because I can't get this cleanliness thing down. I can't get my house under control. And so it's so important to take that and just say, why is this not true? It's not true because there's grace and there is nothing we can do to get us closer to God. It is only what he has done for us.
Yeah, and here's my personal theory on the whole John Wesley thing. His mom, Susanna Wesley, had like 19 kids. She probably felt wildly out of control and threw that out of her mouth sometime. And John probably picked it up and started to run with it, right? But let's talk about that word control, because I think, I've heard some counselors that say, if your house is a complete chaotic mess, it's a picture of internal chaos. On the other extreme, if your house is perfect, it's because you feel out of control and you're trying to gain control someplace. And control is a wonky thing either way because we have to yield control to God, right? So talk to us about control and cleanliness and all of that.
I just want to say, a lot of people are often saying that from their own perspective, right? So I think that can be absolutely true both ways, right? But the reality is, a lot of those of us who do struggle in our homes, it's because we are able to cope in the mess. So you will hear some people that will say, you got to get your house under control because otherwise, your internal stuff is a mess and you can't get anything done. And I'm like, no, our problem is that we can get things done even though there's a mess, right? Where a lot of people are like, oh, I have to clean up before I can focus on this project or whatever. And we're like, project? Give me a project. I love projects. And we just don't even think about our house, right? Until all of a sudden it's so completely out of control that then we're stuck, right? So I think that the control thing is honestly a big theme of the book and it's my thing, is I do love control, right? We all do. That's the root of so much sin, right? Is our wanting to be the one in control. And the cleaning feels like something I should be able to control, And so I think for some people, it's like, if I can control this, then I'm good. When in reality, that is a delusion that's ultimately keeping me from God because, like you said, the only option is to acknowledge that he is the one in control and to let him be the one that's the reality of our relationship. And then I'm doing things from a place of understanding that this is not what matters in my relationship with God. He has done everything. I don't have to do anything, but now I am free to do these things out of a different place, where when I am doing it because I think that either it is the way to control or, oh no, I have no hope of control, then that's where things get all messed up.
Yeah. So, okay. So as you're talking, I'm thinking like each of us has a different capacity for how much clutter and mess we can deal with in our home. So I'm a really good surface cleaner. So if you came to my house this morning, it looks pretty good, right? But there are drawers that I just can't get a handle on, or closets that I can't get a handle on, but I need the surface clean. There are other people who can deal with more of a mess. So how does a person decide, like, what can I cope with and what's best for me and my family?
So the way that I talk about that is I call it your clutter threshold. And I don't mean what you prefer aesthetically. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is, what can you handle? What amount of stuff can you personally easily keep under control? If you have more stuff, if you're feeling like your house is difficult and you're feeling like I'm not able to, do this and it's making my life harder, it is pretty much without fail because you have more stuff than you can handle. You're over your clutter threshold. So getting rid of stuff until it's at the point where you can easily keep it under control. So for some people, if that's their surfaces, that's where they need to start decluttering, right? Is because right. The other thing too is most people, there is a level that you're comfortable with, right? Until all of a sudden you're not like, I need to find things and there's piles everywhere, right? Like, so I don't like that. Even though I can function in it, I don't want it. And I do know that I don't want it. So I don't ever like to assume that, oh, they just like their house that way. No. It's often because I really can't. I don't know what to do about it. So I declutter those spaces. For you, if your surfaces are great and you are struggling with inside your cabinets, then it would be a matter of item by item going through those spaces and decluttering those until they get to the point where they consistently stay under control. Because that's the goal. Anything that consistently gets out of control is clutter. And if you want it to stay under control, then it needs to, have less stuff in it.
That's brilliant. Okay, so you are now an empty nester.
Yes. Ish. I had one come back home. Ish. Yeah, he's what?
Yeah, they always do that. I mean, they move out, that's just a thing, But yeah, and it's wonderful, right? Because we love our families. So is it easier for you now that you're an empty nester?
Oh, absolutely. It is, but it is easier because of all the decluttering. So it's not easy because I'm an empty nester. It's easier because I've decluttered so much over the years, right? Because I had this struggle when I lived alone. I had this struggle when we had no children. I had this struggle always, right? And so the answer is having less stuff. But yeah, I mean, there are fewer people to have stuff. Yeah, but at the same time, so 5-minute pickup is the key that I recommend to everybody. Like if you can do a 5-minute pickup, and when you do have kids at home, a 5-minute pickup times 5 people is 25 minutes worth of stuff being picked up. And like, you can make tons of progress in that time, right? But at the same time, that's my clutter threshold, right? Like if it's just me and my husband picking up for 5 minutes, then okay, I can't have as much stuff that gets out of place because we only have 10 minutes worth, when the two of us are combined.
So there's really different seasons of life, right? Because, I remember the toddler season and the grade school season, and I would have the kids pick up about 15 minutes before my husband would get home, just because I knew it would be calmer than during dinner. But then I remember when I went through cancer, right? I didn't have the energy to stay on top of things. And so it was like, okay, this is just a season in my life. So for some moms out there, it kind of depends on the season, right?
It does. And your clutter threshold changes for your season. So when you had cancer, you didn't have the energy to deal with things. So the best way to deal with that is to have less stuff, right? To have fewer things, because that's the thing is when something doesn't exist in my home, I never have to move it. I never have to pick it up. It can't get out of place. You know, I always tell people that now in a crazy season when I'm writing a book or doing whatever, yes, things get out of place, but there's so much less stuff in my house that getting it back into place takes 15 minutes after a crazy week, as opposed to before when I didn't even have a spot for all my stuff, right? Like I didn't have places for things. And so when life happened, which was all the time, and it got out of control, then it was just so defeating. Where now it's like, no, things have places to go and there's so much less, it can't get as out of control.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about something that would be seemingly simple, but trips up a lot of moms. Let's talk about laundry. I mean, if you're in the thick of raising kids, it seems like the laundry is never done, or even if it's all clean, it never gets folded and put away. And then if it does get folded and put away, I mean, there's always random socks, right? So talk to us about laundry.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that I do not say the same thing that most people who talk about this stuff say. Most people will say, oh, make it a daily thing, like do one load a day. I tried so hard to do one load a day. So in the beginning of the blog, I worked on a habit each week and I would try to get under control. Laundry was a habit I tried week after week after week after week, and I kept failing because what I would do, I would wash it, and then you can't just stand there and finish the task, right? So life would happen. I would get about, and the next day I'd be like, oh, that's right. I'm going to start a load of laundry because I'm going to do that every day. And I would go back and that same load from yesterday was still sitting there. And then I had to rewash it with some vinegar so that it didn't stink, right? And so I never made progress. And so what works for me and works really well, but people resist it so hard until they try it, is a laundry day. And the reason I do this is because I have a project brain. I love a big project. I love beginning, middle, end, be done. Laundry day lets me do that. Okay. So, but here's the key. You can't judge whether it works for you until the third laundry day, because the first laundry day is catching up. Like if you are behind on laundry, you have no idea, and I say this from experience, you have no idea what a week's worth of laundry is. And so people will tell me, oh, no, our family has this, this, and this. This is how much laundry. I'm like, if you're behind on laundry, you don't actually know. Like, and so the first laundry day is gathering every piece of dirty clothes in the entire house, making it into piles, and then working through those piles. The first laundry day could take an entire week. If you're that behind and you're catching up, okay? But the key is that any newly dirtied laundry is not part of that laundry day, okay? So that newly dirtied laundry goes into the hampers or whatever you put your dirty laundry in, right? So when you finish that first laundry day, even if it takes from Monday morning to Saturday night, you do the second laundry day on Monday morning again, okay? But this time, even though you're mad, because you're like, I literally did laundry all day last week, I shouldn't have to do it again. But that second laundry day, you only have 1 week's worth of laundry. And that's the first time you realize, oh, this is a week's worth of laundry. This is, for sure, by definition, not as overwhelming as the catching up from who knows how long, okay, of things that we hadn't worn in forever. And they've been sitting at the bottom of the hamper forever, right? Then you do that laundry day, and it will take you most likely a day or less. And then the third laundry day, you've gone an entire week not feeling guilty about laundry, not thinking about it, opening up your drawer and there's clean underwear every single day in everybody's drawer. And it's like the most exciting thing that's happened in a long time, right? You're not doing any emergency loads. And so you experience that on the third one. So the third one is when you go, oh, this is the value of laundry day, is that it can be done. Like you can be done. Because people say, oh, there's no such thing as being done with laundry. And I'm like, actually, if you do a laundry day, there is such thing as being done with laundry. And there's so much value in that for my brain, right? To not have to think about it and to know for 6 days, I don't have to worry about this and feel guilty that I'm not doing laundry because we've got what we need. And I know that the next is going to be done on the third day. So I always tell people, give it the 3 weeks. It's really hard to do that, but you will find out if that works for you. Now, if a load a day works for you, that's what you should be doing. But if you've tried that over and over and you're like, I just can't get it to work, you need to try laundry day.
Well, and so much of this, it seems, has to do with the way our brains are wired. I think of people who struggle with ADHD, right? So they start a project and they really want to finish that project, but then they go to do a load of laundry and they get distracted by another thing that's out of place. And, it's a whole thing that snowballs. But I think you touched on something towards the beginning about learning to thank God for the way you were created. And I think that's such a big skill for those of us, particularly who are women. It's something to be able to say, I'm content with who God created me to be, and I'm going to work with him. So there's another question I want to ask you. I've never heard this term before. You talk about trad wife. What even is that? TRAD wife.
I don't talk about it. I'm just saying this is a thing that people are talking about, right? And so I don't want to claim it's a trend, and I honestly could ask my kids more and they would know more. But I know it's a trend. It's a buzzword that I'm hearing a lot. And it's the idea of, I want to just be a traditional wife. Like, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom, and I just want to be the traditional wife. Well, here's the reality. That was my dream, even though we didn't say trad wife, right? Like, I didn't know what that meant. That wasn't a thing in 1999 or whatever. But my dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, that was my life goal, was to do that. And I was literally in the middle of living what I wanted to do. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be at home. And it had literally never occurred to me that I would still be messy when I hit that point in my life, right? Like, because I am an intelligent person and I tackle things and I figure them out. And so I just assumed I'll figure it out when I get there. And then I was trying to figure it out and I couldn't do it. So the feeling of failure was not just, oh, this is hard. It's, wait a minute. This was what I wanted to do. This was what I assumed I was going to be good at and I was going to enjoy. And instead, I can't have a play date in my home without 2 weeks notice. Because my house was so bad. And so it was like, I was not able to do that thing. So the reason that we put that in the marketing, materials was, this is a trend. And what I know is that idea of, this is what I want to do and this is what it'll be like, and that won't be hard for me then, is often the thing that causes those of us who truly struggle to hit rock bottom, when we hit that point where we're like, oh, I'm here now and I still can't do this. There is no magical cure at some point to, oh, okay, this is easy now, right? Which when that's in the future, it's easy to be like, oh, well, once I hit that point in my life, then this will all be easy, right? Like, that's how life goes, is we think that that's going to happen and it doesn't, but there are real strategies to actually make it possible.
And then, you go to church some Sunday and some very well-meaning pastor preaches on Proverbs 31 woman. And it just tells us that, in order to be a godly woman, our purse has to be clean, our laundry room has to be clean, our house has to be clean. And I'm like, what in the world? We accept that this is a poetic book, and we've kind of elevated her like some superwoman who can work outside the home, keep everything organized in the home, cooks like Martha Stewart, cleans and decorates.
But it never talks about if her house is clean or not. Literally, there is not a single thing in that chapter that talks about being clean, organized, anything. What it does say is that she's very hardworking. And people assume that people assume that a messy house is only a result of laziness. That is not true. I would work and work and work, and my house was constantly a disaster. And so it was like, this makes no sense that I am working this hard and my house is a disaster. I wasn't working on the right things. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so there is a way to keep your house under control, but it is not a result of laziness necessarily. Obviously, there could be that, but that is not an equation. It's not an equation that laziness equals a messy house, or that a messy house is because of laziness. And so we assume that, but it never says what her house looked like. And the reality is that the people who struggle with this, like we talked about in the beginning, are highly creative and tend to be very driven, successful women, just like her. Like when I read the description of her, it feels so familiar to me. It sounds like the people who I am working with, right? It's the people.
Okay, but do you make your own clothes like she did?
I
just have to ask.
I'm just going to tell you, like that type, like when I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, I absolutely thought I was going to be making our own clothes.
I tried that too, and then I gave away my sewing machine when I started to write books because I'm like, this isn't working for me.
But I collected and collected. I collected all the things I needed to be crafty and to make my own this, that, and the other. I cloth diapered. I did all the things that I was, and nobody was cloth diapering at that point, but I wanted to do all of those things. So yes, that is exactly my target audience. They're the people who have all that stuff in their house for all the things that they want to do, but then they've brought in so much of that stuff that it's keeping them from doing the things that they want to do because they don't have the room to set up a sewing machine, and they don't have, all of this works together. Yeah.
I just love this book so much, and I love your heart. So we are pretty much out of time, but I've enjoyed this so much that I just keep going. But what I want you to do is, would you tell our listeners, first of all, where they can get a hold of this book, and then kind of give them a closing thought, where they can get in touch with you? Are you still doing your blog, Confessions of a... Okay. So give us all that information.
Okay. So you can find me at aslobcomesclean.com or danakWhite.com. Either one, they redirect there. I have a blog. I don't really write on the blog as much anymore, but I have a podcast and a YouTube channel. And books are wherever books are sold, and hopefully in your local library. You can always request it in your local library if that's an issue for you, finances. But my number one takeaway would be to say that accepting that this is how your brain works is not accepting that this is how your house has to be. Accepting how your brain works is actually the freedom to find what does work for you that will allow you to get your home to the point that you want it to be. Okay, so it's accepting yourself is not giving up. It's actually the beginning of hope for real change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And at the end of the day, like the book says, Jesus cares more about your heart than your home. And so again, friends, the title of the book is Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy House. He cares about your heart. And we have been talking with author Dana K. White, and I hope you'll look her up on YouTube. We'll make sure we have your YouTube link in our show notes, Dana, and the link to your blogs and your website. And I hope you'll get this book and get the other books that Dana has written, because I think they're going to help you. You know, there's so much guilt in motherhood. And we here at The Connected Mom, we don't want you to feel guilty. We want you to pursue Jesus, and we want you to pursue relationships with other moms. And when you look at other moms' houses, if they look better than yours, that's okay. You be you, and you accept the way God's made you. And so I hope you're going to join us next week again for another episode of the Connected Mom podcast. And Dana, it has been so wonderful to have you here with us. It's been practical. It's been a fun conversation. And I hope, friends, that you walk away blessed today. So thanks for joining us. And hey, if you liked this episode, would you please like us and suggest to your friends that they follow the Connected Mom podcast as well? Thanks so much. And we'll be back next week with another episode.